Back in the 70s, toy companies apparently thought kids were made of steel. Safety rules? Barely a suggestion. If a toy didn't have sharp edges, toxic fumes, or the potential to send you to the ER, was it even fun? Some of the most popular playthings back then were basically hazards disguised as entertainment. Let's take a look at 15 childhood fun items that were really just accidents waiting to happen. First on our list, lawn darts. In the 1970s, family barbecues often featured a seemingly innocent game that would make modern parents faint. Lawn darts, also known as jarts, were oversized darts with metal tips sharp enough to pierce through soil, sod, and unfortunately, human skulls. Players would toss these weighted missiles high into the air, aiming for plastic rings placed on the ground. The statistics paint a grim picture. By the time these lethal toys were finally banned in the late 1980s, they had been linked to at least 3 child fatalities and an astounding 6,000 emergency room visits. One particularly devastating case involved a 7-year-old girl who was struck in the head when her brother missed the target. The battle to ban lawn darts wasn't without controversy. Many adults were outraged at losing their beloved backyard pastime. "It's not the darts that are dangerous, it's irresponsible parents," was a common refrain. Some enthusiasts even stockpiled sets before the ban took effect, creating an underground market for these deadly games. What's truly bewildering is that modified, safer versions still exist legally. These updated lawn darts feature blunted tips and lighter weights, but they serve as a reminder of how cavalier the 70s were about child safety. Finding original metal-tipped lawn darts is technically illegal, but they still surface at garage sales where nostalgic boomers will pay hundreds for the privilege of owning a weapon disguised as a toy. Clackers. Remember when smashing 2 rock-hard acrylic balls together at high speed was considered good, clean fun? Clackers, those colorful spheres connected by a string, were the fidget spinners of the 70s, if fidget spinners occasionally exploded near your face. The premise was simple. Hold the string in the middle and move your hand up and down, causing the balls to clack together. The faster you got them going, the more impressive your skills. Unfortunately, early versions were made from acrylic glass that had an unfortunate tendency to shatter midair, sending sharp plastic shrapnel flying in all directions. School nurses across America reported waves of distinctive injuries, bruised wrists, lacerated palms, and injured faces. The telltale purple bands around children's wrists, jokingly referred to as clacker bracelets, became so common that schools nationwide began confiscating them faster than you could say, "Safety hazard?" Some brave souls who survived the clacker era still reminisce about the satisfying sound they made, that distinctive clack, clack, clack that signaled playground dominance. Many of these nostalgic adults conveniently forget the accompanying sound of crying when the inevitable injury occurred. Manufacturers eventually replaced the acrylic with safer plastic materials, but by then, parents had grown wise to the danger of giving their children what amounted to high-velocity impact weapons. Creepy crawlers. Nothing says wholesome childhood fun quite like handling toxic chemicals near a surface heated to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Creepy crawlers let kids create their own rubbery bugs by pouring liquid plasti-goop into metal molds and baking them in what was essentially a child-sized industrial oven. The original Thingmaker featured a heating element with all the safety features of a bare stovetop. There was no automatic shutoff, minimal insulation, and certainly no child-proof locks. Burns were so commonplace that many kids viewed them as just part of the experience. "You weren't really playing with creepy crawlers unless you had at least one blister," recalled one 70s child. The true horror wasn't just the burns, but the plasti-goop itself. This mysterious substance contained vinyl chloride and other chemicals now known to cause respiratory issues. Kids would hover over the open trays, breathing in fumes that would make modern OSHA inspectors faint on the spot. One former enthusiast described the smell as a mix between melting plastic and what I now recognize as my brain cells dying. When parents finally caught on to the dangers, manufacturers attempted to make safer versions. The temperature was lowered, the molds redesigned, and the chemicals slightly less toxic, but it was too little, too late. Parents had already moved on to slightly less dangerous toys, like chemistry sets that only occasionally resulted in minor explosions. Today's versions feature elaborate safety mechanisms and non-toxic materials, proving that kids can still make creepy rubber bugs without risking third-degree burns or chemical poisoning. Progress, it seems, sometimes comes with fewer emergency room visits. A few months ago, I had no idea what a health ring even was until my fiancée got me one, and I have to say, I'm shocked this isn't a widely known and used product. It tracks my stress levels, and what I found out is that some supplements made my stress score spike, while others actually helped bring it down. I adjusted a few things based on that, and honestly, I feel 10 years younger. My wife mainly uses it to track her menstrual cycles, and she is obsessed with her sleep quality score. I noticed they are currently running a limited 69% discount, but I don't know how long it will last. It's currently only $60, and it's clear. This one is the best bang for your buck, with other health rings priced around $350 with less functions. They managed to price it this low because they cut out the middleman like Amazon, Walmart, etc., who drive up the price and take a big margin, ending up with the customer paying 3 to 5 times more. If you are on TV, you can check it out yourself by pausing the video and scanning the QR code with your phone camera or clicking the first link in the description of this video. Atomic Energy Lab. The 1950s and 70s gave us many questionable toys, but none quite as alarming as the Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab. This wasn't your average baking soda volcano science kit. It contained actual radioactive materials. For just $49.50, parents could gift their children genuine uranium ore, alpha particles, beta-gamma particles, and a working Geiger counter. The kit's manual cheerfully encouraged young scientists to observe radiation in a cloud chamber, handle radioactive materials, and conduct experiments that would trigger modern hazmat teams. No safety goggles included, just blind faith that children wouldn't accidentally irradiate the family cat or create a neighborhood nuclear incident. Most shocking by today's standards, the packaging marketed the kit as educational rather than potentially hazardous. The box featured smiling children gathered around their atomic materials, suggesting this was as harmless as a game of checkers. While no immediate lawsuits emerged, perhaps because the long-term effects would take years to manifest, sales remained surprisingly low. Even in the atomic-obsessed era, parents somehow sensed that radioactive elements might not make ideal playthings. The kit was pulled from shelves after only a year, making it one of the shortest-lived commercial toys in history. The Atomic Energy Lab stands as perfect evidence that the mid-20th century had absolutely zero concern for safety regulations when it came to children's entertainment. Slip and slide. Who knew that a simple sheet of yellow plastic could send so many people to the hospital? The slip and slide hit backyards in 1961 and became an instant summer sensation. The concept couldn't be simpler. Unfurl a long plastic sheet, hose it down, run, dive, and slide across your lawn. Refreshing fun for the whole family. Or, as emergency room doctors soon discovered, a remarkably efficient way to cause spinal injuries. While children's flexible bodies could usually handle the abrupt stop at the end of the slide, adults and teenagers quickly learned a painful physics lesson. A grown person diving onto a thin sheet of plastic over hard ground creates the perfect conditions for compression fractures and neck injuries. By the 1970s and 80s, reports of paralysis and serious spinal damage led to the first wave of warnings and lawsuits. The manufacturer eventually slapped explicit warnings on the boxes. Not for adult use, serious spinal injury can result. This warning only made adults more determined to prove they could still handle a childhood toy. Emergency rooms across America regularly treated 30 and 40-year-olds who couldn't resist the siren call of slippery plastic, only to discover their bodies weren't as resilient as they remembered. Modern versions include inflatable bumpers and softer landing areas, but the original remained essentially unchanged until safety regulations forced modifications. Today's kids enjoy safer sliding, but miss out on witnessing adults attempting to relive their youth, followed by the educational ambulance rides that so often concluded these family bonding moments. Battlestar Galactica missile launcher. Long before warning labels became standard on toy packaging, the late 1970s brought us a particularly dangerous space-themed toy, the Battlestar Galactica Colonial Viper. This toy spaceship, modeled after the popular sci-fi television show, featured a spring-loaded mechanism that fired small plastic missiles. perfect for pretend space battles and, unfortunately, for becoming lodged in children's throats. The missiles measured just under 2 inches long, small enough to be swallowed by young children, but large enough to completely block an airway. What made these particularly hazardous was the satisfying pop with which they launched. The stronger the launch, the more likely a child might put their face directly over the barrel to watch the missile fire, creating a perfect pathway to respiratory distress. After tragic incidents, the manufacturer recalled approximately 300,000 of these toys in 1979. This recall sparked a wider industry examination of similar projectile toys, leading to stricter regulations about the size and launching power of toy projectiles. The Consumer Product Safety Commission established new guidelines that would forever change the toy industry. The silver lining of this tragic history is that it helped establish the choke tube test, a standardized cylinder used to determine if a toy part is too small for children under 3. Any object that fits entirely within this tube is considered a choking hazard. This single innovation has likely saved countless lives in the decades since. Today, collectors pay hundreds of dollars for intact Battlestar Galactica ships with their original missiles, usually displaying them safely behind glass, where they belong rather than in the eager hands of space battle enthusiasts with developing swallowing reflexes. Water wiggle. The 1970s backyard was a literal playground of danger, as evidenced by the infamous water wiggle. This garden hose attachment created what can only be described as an uncontrollable, pressurized water whip that flailed wildly in whatever direction it pleased, usually straight at children's faces. The design was deceptively simple. Attach one end to your garden hose, turn on the water, and watch as water pressure forced the toy to dance and snake across the lawn. Sounds fun until you realize this plastic tube could build up enough force to leave welts and bruises on unsuspecting children. What made the water wiggle truly dangerous wasn't just its unpredictable movements. The real hazard lay in its plastic cap, which, if it came loose, could transform the toy into a pressurized water jet capable of causing internal injuries. The toy basically gave children the experience of firefighter training without any of the protective gear or adult supervision. After at least one reported child fatality, the water wiggle was recalled, but not before countless children experienced the unique trauma of being attacked by their own garden hose. The Consumer Product Safety Commission deemed it a substantial hazard to children in 1978. Modern water toys have significantly better safety features, but none capture the raw, chaotic energy of the original water wiggle, which managed to turn the simple joy of cooling off in summer into an exercise in dodging a sentient water hose with apparent anger issues. Sky dancers. In the early 1990s, a toy emerged that promised magical flying fairies but delivered plastic projectiles to the face. Sky dancers featured fairy dolls mounted on a launcher base. When a child pulled a string, the doll would spin rapidly, its foam wings creating lift, sending the fairy soaring unpredictably into the air. The marketing showed graceful fairy dolls gently floating through the air like butterflies. The reality? Hard plastic dolls spinning at high speeds, capable of reaching surprising heights before diving bomb-style toward whatever happened to be in their path. These weren't so much toys as they were household missiles disguised in tutus and glitter. The statistics tell a grim tale. Between 1994 and 2000, sky dancers caused an estimated 230 injuries. These included broken teeth, facial lacerations, temporary blindness, and even mild concussions. One particularly concerning incident involved a child who suffered a detached retina after a direct hit to the eye. After receiving 170 consumer complaints, the manufacturer finally issued a recall of 8.5 million sky dancers in June 2000. The retail value of these recalled toys exceeded $40 million, making it one of the largest toy recalls of its era. The lesson learned: anything that spins at high speed before launching unpredictably into the air probably shouldn't be marketed to small children still developing their ducking reflexes. Hippity hop. Before exercise balls became standard equipment in every gym, the 1970s had the hippity hop, a large rubber ball with a handle that allowed children to bounce around like kangaroos. The concept seemed innocent enough. Kids would straddle the ball, grab the handle, and hop around the yard or basement for hours of active fun. The hippity hop came in vibrant colors and featured various character faces, What it didn't feature was any meaningful safety testing or structural integrity. These bouncing balls had a nasty habit of popping mid-hop, especially when used on rough surfaces or by children exceeding the recommended weight limit. When a hippity hop burst while a child was mid-bounce, physics took over in the cruelest way possible. The sudden loss of support would send the unsuspecting hopper face first into whatever surface happened to be below. It was essentially a device designed to give children their first lesson in gravitational betrayal. Injuries ranged from minor scrapes and bruises to broken noses, chipped teeth, and fractured wrists from children trying to break their falls. What made these injuries particularly common was that the balls often failed without warning. One minute a child would be happily bouncing along, the next they'd be picking gravel out of their forehead. Modern versions feature reinforced rubber, anti-burst technology, and more secure handles, making them significantly safer than their vintage counterparts. While childhood resilience certainly developed from surviving these toys, most parents today prefer their children to learn life lessons that don't involve emergency dental work. Super elastic bubble plastic. Did you ever wonder what would happen if someone combined plastic balloons with toxic chemicals and marketed it to children? The 1970s answered that question with super elastic bubble plastic, a toy that let kids create colorful plastic bubbles while inhaling a cocktail of harmful fumes. The concept was simple. Squeeze a small amount of gooey substance from a tube onto a straw, then blow through the straw to create a bubble that would harden into a plastic sphere. What made this toy particularly concerning wasn't just the finished product, but what went into making it. The chemical composition included acetone, ethyl acetate, and polyvinyl acetate, essentially the same ingredients found in industrial solvents and glue. Every colorful bubble came with a deep breath of toxic fumes directly into young lungs. Kids across America were essentially huffing industrial chemicals while their parents praised their creativity, the 1970s version of arts and crafts time. The tubes even emitted a sweet, pleasant smell that encouraged deeper breathing of the harmful vapors. A study conducted in 1976 found that extended exposure to these chemicals could cause respiratory problems, headaches, dizziness, and nausea. Despite this, the toy remained on shelves for years before safety concerns finally forced manufacturers to alter the formula. The most alarming aspect was how the packaging celebrated the magical transformation from goo to bubble without a single warning about the toxic fumes. Modern toy safety regulations would never allow such a product near children today. The toy perfectly captured the spirit of an era when fresh air sometimes meant opening a window while inhaling chemical compounds that would make a modern hazmat team suit up. Easy Bake Oven. Let your little girl be just like mommy, proclaimed the advertisements for the Easy Bake Oven, a toy that brought the joys of baking and second-degree burns to children across America. Introduced in 1963, the original Easy Bake Oven used a fully functional incandescent light bulb that could reach temperatures of up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The tiny toy oven allowed children as young as 8 to bake miniature cakes and cookies using small mixes and pans. What could possibly go wrong with giving young children access to an appliance that could heat up to temperatures capable of causing serious burns? As it turns out, quite a lot. Throughout the 1970s, the Easy Bake Oven became notorious for causing burns when small fingers got trapped inside the heating chamber. The narrow slots designed for inserting baking pans became perfect traps for curious fingers, resulting in painful and sometimes severe injuries. It taught children important life skills like cooking, patience, and basic wound care all in one convenient package. The situation reached a breaking point in 2007 when Hasbro recalled 1 million Easy Bake Ovens after receiving 249 reports of children getting their hands or fingers caught in the oven. The recall documented 77 cases of burns, with one case requiring a partial finger amputation for a 5-year-old girl. Modern versions have abandoned the light bulb heating element in favor of safer technology and feature numerous additional safety mechanisms. While today's Easy Bake Ovens might be safer, they lack the genuine danger that made baking 6 tiny cookies such a thrilling adventure for previous generations. The authentic childhood experience of explaining a burn to the school nurse has been lost to progress. Jarts. Not to be confused with their equally dangerous cousins already discussed, Jarts represented another variation of the "let's give children weighted missiles with metal tips" category of 1970s outdoor entertainment. These particular lawn darts featured metal tips heavy enough to embed themselves in soil or anything else they happened to strike. The yard experience typically involved setting up plastic rings as targets on opposite sides of the yard. Players would then take turns arcing these metal-tipped projectiles high into the air, attempting to land them within the rings. Sounds innocent enough until you consider that these darts could penetrate a human skull with relative ease. By 1988, lawn darts had been linked to approximately 6,700 injuries treated in emergency rooms. The statistics became even more alarming when broken down. Approximately 81% of those injuries involved children under 15 years old, with 50% affecting children under 10. Head injuries accounted for the most serious cases, including the tragic death of a 7-year-old girl in California. Despite mounting evidence of their danger, Jarts maintained a devoted following. Fans argued that banning them represented government overreach, apparently believing that the right to hurl metal spikes around the backyard was enshrined somewhere in the Constitution. Nevertheless, the Consumer Product Safety Commission enacted a full ban in December 1988. The ban created an immediate black market for existing sets, with yard sales and flea markets becoming hotspots for under-the-table Jart transactions. Today, original sets in good condition can fetch hundreds of dollars from collectors. Modern enthusiasts display them proudly, hopefully using better judgment than the generation that thought combining alcohol, barbecues, and flying metal spikes made for ideal family entertainment. Moon shoes. The 1970s introduced children to moon shoes, mini trampolines that strapped onto your feet with the promise of bouncing like an astronaut. These plastic platforms contained small springs that supposedly simulated the feeling of lunar gravity. What they actually simulated was a trip to the emergency room. Moon shoes consisted of plastic platforms with elastic bands stretched across the frame. Children would strap these contraptions to their feet using adjustable Velcro straps that rarely stayed secure. The unsteady nature of these foot trampolines meant balance was nearly impossible to maintain, especially for younger users. The instability created the perfect conditions for twisted ankles, sprained wrists, and spectacular faceplants. Moon shoes gave kids the authentic lunar experience of crashing onto surfaces with no atmosphere to cushion the fall. The design flaws were numerous: straps that came loose during jumping, springs that broke unexpectedly, and a complete lack of ankle support. The narrow platforms also meant children would often land half on and half off the shoe, creating the perfect leverage to twist an ankle. Toy crossbows. Before video games allowed virtual combat, toy manufacturers offered children miniature weapons capable of inflicting actual harm. The toy crossbows of the 1970s stand out as particularly dangerous examples of playtime weaponry. These weren't Nerf-style toys with foam ammunition. They were functioning miniature crossbows capable of launching projectiles with surprising force. The typical toy crossbow could fire wooden darts, plastic arrows, or whatever creative ammunition a child might substitute. This led to immediate problems as children discovered these toys could effectively launch pencils, sticks, and even nails. With draw strengths powerful enough to send projectiles 20 feet or more, these toys turned ordinary objects into potentially dangerous missiles. Nothing said responsible parenting in the 1970s quite like giving children the medieval equivalent of a handgun. Schools quickly banned these weapons, though not before numerous incidents of classroom warfare resulted in minor injuries and major disciplinary actions. The original BB guns, "You'll shoot your eye out," wasn't just a memorable movie line. It was a legitimate concern with the powerful BB guns marketed to children in the mid-20th century. Unlike today's versions with velocity restrictions, vintage BB guns packed enough punch to break windows, injure pets, and yes, potentially cause serious eye injuries. The Daisy Red Ryder, perhaps the most iconic BB gun, could shoot its BBs at 250 feet per second, fast enough to penetrate skin or damage an eye. These weren't toys so much as introductory firearms with marketing aimed at children who still believed in Santa Claus. Despite known risks, BB guns were standard gifts for many young boys, often given with shockingly minimal safety instruction. Statistics from the 1970s showed that BB guns caused approximately 3,400 injuries per year requiring emergency room treatment. Approximately 14% of these injuries affected the eye, with some resulting in permanent vision damage or blindness. While BB guns are still available today, they come with more warnings, safety mechanisms, and are generally recognized as potentially dangerous items requiring adult supervision. The nostalgia for these classic toys remains strong, but so does the understanding that they represent a time when childhood safety was considered optional rather than essential.